Hi, Stampin' Peace friends. Welcome to my studio. I'm Mary Knabe from Westerville, Ohio. Today I'm going to demonstrate for you how I cut this piece of Take to the Sky Designer Series paper. As you can see, it's already kind of in a grid format or one sheet wonder format. So I'm going to cut this, and then I will show you how to make 11 cards from this one sheet of DSP. And I'll also be using the Adventurous Sky stamp set and dies for today's cards. Okay, I'm excited to get started. The first thing I'm going to do is cut my sheet of DSP. And I'm going to cut at 6 inches from top to bottom. The next thing I'm going to do is, and if you feel better about cutting each of these pieces individually, by all means do that. But each of these pieces, 6 by 12 inch, you're going to turn. How about if I do it this way and just show you? You're going to turn to the horizontal position and cut at 4 inches. So 4-inch increments. Now, if this happens where you're off just a wee bit, just go ahead and trim that, because it will not make a difference in the making of your cards. Sometimes the DSP measurements are just a wee bit off. I'm going to do the same thing with the other 6-inch by 12-inch piece in the horizontal position and cut it just like that. Cut it 4 inches again. So now I have a bunch of 6-inch by 4-inch pieces. The first one, with the large airplane on the smoky slate background, I'm going to cut at 5 1/4 inches. And I'll be using these two pieces for my first card. Then I will be cutting these pieces in half. They're 3-inch by 4-inch. And then lastly, for each of those columns, I have these 3 tags. And that means 6 inches divided by 3 is 2. So each of these will be cut at 2 inches. Now, you can also just look at the line where the 2 images meet and just make sure wherever 2 parts meet is what you're putting in your cutting groove. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other stack. Cut this in half. I have 2 3 by 4-inch pieces. Whoops. Same thing with this one. And I'll be using every one of these in some way to make a card. Now, before we get started with me showing you the cards I've made with this, I'm going to just snip the corners off these tags. So they look like true tags. You don't need to measure or anything. Just snip, put your scissors blade right along that line the long side of the triangles to remove those corners. Quick and easy. Okay, so let's get started making the first card. This is so simple. For the first card, I've got a piece of smoky slate cardstock, and this measures 4¼ inches by 11. 4¼ by 11. I've scored it at 5½ in the center, and I'm going to give that fold a nice crease with my bone folder. I'm going to insert this piece of basic white cardstock, and it measures 5¼ by 4 inches. This card base just shows another way to score and cut a piece of 8½ by 11 cardstock to make an A2 size card. Next, I'm going to use these two pieces. Before I do anything, I want to stamp a sentiment right here. And I want to keep this card monochromatic. So for that reason, I will be stamping with smoky slate onto the DSP. And I have the sentiment, happy birthday. I'm going to pull in a piece of scrap paper really quick to make sure I practice stamping straight. That looks pretty good. Okay, ready to go. And I'm going to stamp the sentiment in this lower right corner. Pretty good, if I do say so myself. Oftentimes we forget that it really is okay to stamp on our DSP. It might not work with every DSP sheet, but it works with many, and this is a perfect example of that. Now, the 3/4 inch strip that I trimmed off, I'm going to add to the inside of the card. And you could put it on the left or the right. You can put that strip of DSP right up to the edge of the white cardstock, or you can leave a little bit of the white showing. All right, so there's the first card. For the second card, I'm using this piece. And to keep this video moving, I have pre-cut and even did some stamping and die cutting prior to starting the recording of this video. So I've got a Night of Navy card base, which measures 5½ by 8½, scored at 4¼ down the middle. My white inside is 4 inches by 5¼ And then I have the same size in boho blue, 4 inches by 5¼ Now, I cut this from that sheet of DSP, and it measures 3 inches by 4 inches. So I'm mounting that on a piece of white that is 3¼ by 4¼ just to get a nice border and to make it pop off the card, make it a little more visible as the focal point. And I'm going to adhere this to the center of my card front. just like that. And then I've stamped this sentiment on a 1-inch strip. So it is 1 inch by 4 1/4 inches. And I'll put it right about there, maybe like 5/8, 3/4 of an inch from the bottom. But you play with it and see what looks good to you. But I think that's a good distance. So I will stop there. I'm trying to keep all my cards in order as I make them. I will embellish these cards at the end of the video. For the next card, I'm using a boho blue card base, 5.5 by 8.5 inches, 4 1/4 down the center, scored at 4 1/4 down the center. And this card is actually going to be a horizontal card. Putting my white 5 1/4 by 4 inches inside, and then I have a piece of Night of Navy, which has been cut with the same dimensions, 5 1/4 by 4 inches. Next, I'm going to adhere this piece of DSP to the center of my card front. And this piece again is 3 by 4 inches, which if you just cut along the lines of the different rectangles in that sheet of DSP, you really don't even need to know the measurements, just as if you could just, if you wanted to replicate it as a one-sheet wonder with other DSP, then the measurements would come into play. I'm going to stamp Flying By to Say Hi in Night of Navy ink. Again, I just am going to do a practice on my scrap paper, my grid paper. Okay. Oh, what did I do there? I went for the ink pad and I didn't go to the ink pad at all. I'll have to make sure to cover that up with one of my airplanes. What was I thinking? I wasn't watching. That's what happened. I was thinking, but I wasn't watching. But just you wait and see. I'm going to be able to hide that little boo-boo. These planes were stamped with the Adventurous Sky stamp set and then die cut with the coordinating dies in the set. Let's see where this one's going. I think that'll be good. Did any of you catch that instead of putting my stamp in the ink pad, it went onto my card front? Goodness. I don't know if I've ever done that before, to be honest. But it all worked out fine. Okay. Here is for the next card. And I've got my sentiment stamped, but I want to show you a trick here. This sentiment, or I should say the die, is really too long for this sentiment, correct? We could use it that way, but it really doesn't need to be that long. So what I've done is just slid the die down. Okay, I moved it further to the left, and then I'm going to tape that in place and die cut it like that. Whoops, slid right off. So here you can see it's too long. I'm sliding it to the right of the words. And I want to use this Post-it tape to hold that die in place. I'm going to put another one on. Just like that. And then I'm ready to die cut it. So here is my die cut sentiment, and then I just snip the end and cut it to the size I want or need. Just like that. Easy peasy. So, and a lot of times we use dies like this that are good for sentiments on lots of our other sentiments that contain sentiments, or stamp sets that contain sentiments. And then doing that, knowing that process, that gives us a little more versatility, a little more opportunity to use that die in a slightly different way. Once again, I've got a boho blue card base. And I've got basic white and night of navy that have been cut to 5 1/4 by 4 inches. This has some fuzzy edges. Does anybody know why that would happen? That I would get some fuzzy edges on my cardstock? For me, that's often a sign that I need to replace the blade in my paper trimmer. I'm using this piece cut from that sheet of DSP, and I'm mounting it on copper clay cardstock. The copper clay measures 3 1/4 by 4 1/4 inches. And I'm going to adhere this with dimensionals, but I'm going to adhere it at an angle, just for a little bit different twist on this layout. And I think that looks pretty good. And then I'm ready to adhere my sentiment that I trimmed down a little bit. And I'm going to put this on with a couple of mini dimensionals. They happen to be the perfect size for this little banner. And I'm making the right end of my banner go right along the edge of the copper clay to help it pop. And by the way, all of the sentiments you see me use in this demonstration are from the Adventurous Sky stamp set. Once again, basic white and night of navy have been cut to 4 inches by 5 1/4. By putting white cardstock on the inside of your card, it makes it a lot easier for you to see the message you're writing and for the person receiving the card to read it. I'm going to use, this is a horizontal card. I'm using this, the map of the world. It's 3 inches by 4 inches, so my copper clay cardstock measures 3 1/4 by 4 1/4. And then I'm mounting it onto smoky slate, and I just wanted a very small border of the smoky slate around the copper clay color. So this measures 3 3/8 by 4 3/8. Then I'm going to adhere these layers to the center of my card front. I'm just going to run my finger across that and kind of tuck those little fuzzies underneath. That's better. Has a cleaner, more professional look that way. And then I stamped and die cut Happiest Father's Day. I used one of the circle dies from the Stylish Shapes dies, and I stamped with copper clay ink. I'm going to add this to the center of my card front. Easy peasy, right? You will find that if you go to my blog, stampinpiece.com, to after you've watched this video on YouTube, you can get all of the cutting and scoring dimensions for each of these cards. Next, I have a copper clay card base. Basic white on the inside again. And this time I'm using 2 of the 3" by 4" pieces of DSP. And each one will be mounted onto the same color cardstock that has been cut to 3 1/4 by 4 1/4. So there's Mossy Meadow. And I'm going to adhere this to the smoky slate. Now I see a little bit of navy blue against that smoky slate. So I'm just gonna use my snips and trim that right off. There we go. And just like I did on the first card, I'm going to stamp Happy Birthday in smoky slate. And to know where I want to stamp that sentiment, I'm going to lay out my pair of layers first, so I have a good idea of where I want to stamp the sentiment. So I'm going for the upper left corner, just because of the way I'm laying out all these layers on my card front. Again, I'm stamping with smoky slate, so I've got a tone on tone going on there. So the sentiment is still clearly visible, but it really doesn't take away from the DSP at all. This will go in my bottom right corner. I'm just looking to see if I have even margins of the copper clay on the right edge and the bottom edge. And this little corner wants to keep sticking up. There. Okay, for my next card, once again, I'm using that large airplane that I stamped and die cut. And if you're wondering how I chose these colors, Copper Clay, Night of Navy, and Smoky Slate, when there's some Mossy Meadow in there, I simply looked at the back of the DSP pack and it told me all of the colors that are included in that DSP. So if you're not sure, a lot of times I use that for color combinations as well. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. This is going to be mounted onto the Smoky Slate, okay? And here you'll find that it's the Smoky Slate and the white that are the same size, 4 inches by 5 1/4. And then that Night of Navy is just an 1/8 inch smaller. So 3 7/8 inch by 5 1/8 for the Night of Navy. And I put this Smoky Slate, this light color, between the navy and the Copper Clay, and it really makes it's a nice color combination, but it also makes those darker colors pop. Next, I'm pulling this piece, one of the tags, just kind of setting it there, not really pressing it down yet, because I want to put my sentiment in that upper left corner. Just like that. So I want them near each other, but not taking away from the rest or each other. Just wanted a little bit of spacing between them. Remember, after I finish putting together all 11 cards, I'll show you some ways that you can embellish these cards. Now this one is Mossy Meadow and Smoky Slate. Not really a combination I would have thought of on my own, I don't think. But as I was designing this card, I found that I really, really liked it. And I'm going to put the white in the middle first, but then I'm going to do a little bit of background stamping. Set these aside for a moment. So on this piece, and I'll need a piece of scrap paper. On this piece, I'm going to do some random stamping around the outside of this 4 inch by 5 1/4 inch piece. And I'm using this, I don't really know what to call it, but it looks like metal and rivets and things. And again, I'm stamping with Smoky Slate. So sticking to that kind of monochromatic look. And before I add this to my card front, I'm just going to lay this piece of cardstock on top to make sure I have enough stamping, okay? And I do. And this piece measures 3 1/4 by 4 1/2 inches, okay? The Smoky Slate is 4 inches by 5 1/4. And the Mossy Meadow measures 3 1/4 by 4 1/2. So that little bit of stamping on the background really gives it a little more dimension and interest. And then I'm going to stamp on this tag. And for this, I want to stamp to my friend at the bottom. And I will be stamping this in Mossy Meadow. And I'll just do a practice stamp on my graph paper. Yeah, it looks good. And I'm stamping it very close to the bottom of the tag. Nice. Then I'm going to take the smallest airplane stamp, So there are 3 sizes, large, medium, and small right here. I'm using the smallest size. And I'm going to stamp up here. And then the others, I'm going to be stamping off the left and right edges. So it kind of looks like there's a group of planes flying by. Okay, I'm going to do another little one up here too. And I will add the medium-sized airplane that I stamped and die cut to this tag. And notice again, I'm kind of doing a monochromatic look. I added or stamped the medium-sized plane with Mossy Meadow. And then I'm going to adhere this finished tag at an angle on my card front. I want to center it a little bit better. Okay. So that's the next one. Okay, let me get some of these things out of the way now. And I'm going to use, this tag, okay? And before I do anything with that and adhere it to the card, I want to just punch that white circle out to make a hole, okay? And then I'm going to use my linen thread, just cut off a few inches, and I doubled it. And this is how I like to thread tags. So I doubled, folded in half my linen thread, could be ribbon, whatever you use. And the loop side, I went from front to back, pulled it through, and then the ends are going to go through that loop I pulled. And there you have it, just like that. Easy peasy. Okay, so now let's get started putting this fun card together. Mossy Meadow is my card base. Basic white on the inside. And then I have layers of Night of Navy, and Boho Blue. And these measure 3.5 by 4 3/4 inches, 3.5 by 4 3/4 inches, and then 3 3/4 by 5 inches for the layers. Oops, I think that's out. Let me grab another. So again, Night of Navy is 5 by 3 3/4, and the Boho Blue is 4 3/4 by 3.5. Put that on the center of my card front. And then I'm going to adhere this tag right here. And that tag is kind of acting as like a background to the focal point, which will be our little jet. And I don't know, here's looking for the sentiment that I stamped. So again, I use the Stylish Shapes dies to die cut my sentiment. I'm going to add this with a dimensional, and then I'm going to show you how to put together the airplane. So in the die set, there are pieces that coordinate with the stamps, but there are a few pieces that are really just for die cutting. You're not stamping. So I cut out the body of the plane. In Night of Navy, I cut the wings, the wheels, etc. from basic gray. And then I have this little propeller cut from smoky slate. So let's put these together. I'm going to grab my Stampin' Pierce mat because I'm going to be using my multi-purpose glue to put these pieces together. And you'll see that I use very, very little glue. But if I get that multi-purpose glue in just the right spots, it works wonders. Now I just have to think, is it top or bottom that matches up? Okay. So, whoops. So if you put your glue in those little pieces, it's exactly where you need it. And to match this up, what I like to do is match this nose of the plane and the two wheels. So you can see right now it's a little off, right? But I can slide that into place, and I have a little bit of glue here, so I can slide that also. Hold that for a couple of seconds, and there it is. So the only place I put adhesive was on the nose of the plane and the top of this bottom wing. Then I'm going to add my propeller, just a dot of glue right there. And I'm going to add it just like this. And then finally, I'm going to add my airplane to my card front. And I'll use a couple of dimensionals. I'll use 3 dimensionals to do that. I'll put one in the center also. So it kind of looks like it's taking off when I put it at an angle like this. I love that card. Love, love, love. I love them all, but there's something about that one. Now the next card is very similar. I'm using Smoky Slate for the card base. Got a few too many things right here that are kind of crowding me. Does that happen to you when you're working? You end up with so much stuff all around you, it gets to be a little overwhelming. Now for the layers on my card front, I'm using 2 pieces of copper clay, and they are measuring the same as the last set, 5 by 3 3/4 and 4 3/4 by 3 1/2. The top layer, the smaller copper clay piece, I'm going to pop up on dimensionals before adhering it to the bottom layer. Again, the bottom layer of copper clay is 5 by 3 3/4, and the top layer of copper clay measures 4 3/4 by 3 1/2 inches. I'm using this tag from the DSP sheets. Again, I'm going to use a hole punch to pop out that little white circle. And I'm going to add some linen thread to it. This one I'm going to make a little bit longer, just because I want to show you a little bit of a variation. So again, I'm just folding the length in half, taking the loop end and pushing it through the hole from front to back. Open up that loop and push the ends through. And then just give it a gentle tug. Now it's going to go right here, but what I wanted to show you is on the other card, I just snip the ends and they'll fall wherever they want to when they go through the mail and, or get, are put with a birthday gift, something like that. But on this one, I want to make a knot in the ends. Just like that. And now I'll snip. So just a little bit different way of adding the linen thread to a tag. And I'm adding it to the card front, just a little right from center. Again, I've stamped and die cut the sentiment. And I'm adding it like this. And then finally, I'm going to put the pieces of my airplane together. So remember here, I'm putting my adhesive in just 2 places, on the nose of the plane and then this little spot here. And then I'm using the wheels and the nose of the plane as a guide to lining up the 2 pieces correctly. Just going to hold those in place for a second or two. And then I'm going to put the propeller on, just a drop of glue, and lay that propeller just like that. And then I will add this airplane to my card front with a few Stampin' Dimensionals again. This is a pretty neat set. It kind of has that vintage look to it, which is fun. I think I'll go just, oops, maybe not quite as angled as I first put it down. There we go. And that's that finished card. For the last card, I'll be using these last two tags together. So I'm putting them together because I want to punch the hole from both of those. And I'm actually going to adhere these in place just like this. I want them to be off-centered so that we see the pattern on both of the tags. And then I will cut my linen thread. Oops. That was weird that that piece was already cut. Not sure what that was about, but hey, it works out fine. So again, push the loop from the front to the back and the ends through the loop. And we have that. And I think I'm going to do the same thing and make a little knot in these ends. Again, just a fun little twist or alternative to how we normally add our ribbon or linen thread. I've die cut the sentiment, or stamped the sentiment in copper clay, and then I punched it with a 1.5 inch circle, and I'm going to mount it on top of a 1 3/4 inch circle. And you can use your circle punches, you might have dies, whatever works for you, and what is ever appropriate for the size of the sentiment you're using. Again, these two pieces match in size, 4 inches by 5 1/4 in the white and the boho blue. Oops. I've got a gazillion of these little dimensional backs, and they keep trying to keep it in this little pile in the corner here until I'm finished with the video and can clean up, and they just want to keep jumping over to me or attaching themselves to my adhesive or something else. Don't you love boho blue? I'm so glad they brought this color back last year. And now I'm going to attach my sentiment first in the upper left corner. And then I'm going to attach my tags. Okay, let's continue on so that I can show you the industrial trinkets that are part of the Take to the Sky suite. And as you can see, the two sides are different. This is the one side. It does look very industrial, doesn't it? And then this is the opposite side, that star design, which I think would be really neat on a lot of cards as well. But I did want to draw your attention to the fact that these are rather thick. So they do cause a bump on your cards. I would suggest not using them on scrapbook pages. And if you use them on cards before you send off the card, just put a piece of plain cardstock on top of the area that has the embellishments. So it helps go through the mail better without damaging the envelope or the card. And I've done that many times and have never had a problem with the cards making it in good condition. So here's the first card. I'm going to keep this clean and simple, clean and simple. So I'm going to leave it like that. The next card, I am going to add some of these industrial trinkets to. I'm going to put one. Oops, these do not have adhesive on. They're going to stick by themselves. So just put a dot of glue where you want your embellishment. Put it in place and then just let it go for a while until that glue can dry. Okay, so that's my second card. The third card, I'm going to leave as is. No embellishments, no linen thread. Same thing with my fourth card and my fifth card. And also this card. See, I'm using my embellishments very sparingly. On the next two cards, I'm actually going to add here an embellishment right on top of that white dot, what would be the hole if I wanted to pull a string or ribbon through the tag. And I'm just going to put that right on top, slide it into place, and let that dry. And let's see. Then the other three cards I'm going to leave as is. So do you want to run through them one more time? Let's do that so you can get to see each of them in their finished state without any distractions. So card number 1. Then card number 2. Number 3. Card number 4. Card number 5. And card 6. They all turned out wonderfully, didn't they? And then we had 5 more for a total of 11 cards made with this one sheet of DSP. Pretty awesome, don't you think? I love getting sheets of cards or DSP like that. I'm glad they aren't all like that, of course, but every once in a while in some of the packages, I do enjoy creating cards that have a sheet that have been designed as if they were a one-sheet wonder. We already know where to cut just by looking at it. So lots of fun in making these. I hope you enjoyed this video demonstration, And I look forward to sharing more creative inspiration and projects with you here at Stampin' Peace with Mary Knabe.